Okay, today is Friday. This was your warm-up, which is a little bit longer than the warm-up that I intended, but it is a warm-up nonetheless of all the different questions you'll see in your test. So again, if you're using this as a study guide and it's Sunday night and you're getting ready for your test on Monday morning, this is a good one to use, or you can use the practice test that we have following this particular video. That would also be a good study guide. So the first question says, draw this to solve it. It says 5 groups of 3/4. So if I think about the multiplication sign as the word of, it really says 5 groups of 3/4. So if I draw 3/4 and then multiply it by 5, I would have something that looks like this. And if I ask myself, how many quarters do I have in total? I have 1, 2, 3 here, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. I have 15 quarters altogether. So 5 times 3/4 is 15 quarters, which is a mixed fraction, would be 3 and 3/4. Now, if I wasn't drawing to solve it, obviously, if I was given this black question asked to find the answer, I would probably have said, well, 5 is 5 over 1 multiplied by 3/4. I would have multiplied my numerators and multiplied my denominators, and I would have ended up with the same answer of 3 and 3/4. But the purpose of modeling it is so that you understand what it means to multiply 5 by 3/4. The second question gives you 5/8 and says, what is 5/8 divided by 2? Or, another way to think of it is half of 5/8. When we drew it, we simply drew 5/8. So there's 1/8, 2/8, 3/8, 4/8. There's 5/8 of something, or slightly more than half. And if I was to divide it between two people, I would give this to one person and this to the other person. And each person would receive 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 parts out of 16 in total. So your answer is, what is 5/8 divided by 2? It's 5/16. Obviously, if I was given this question on a test, I wouldn't draw it. If I didn't have to, I would keep my first fraction and multiply by the reciprocal of 2. Since 2 is a whole number, its reciprocal is 1 over 2. So I would have worked that out, and when I did, I would have ended up with the answer 5/16. The next question says, draw to solve 4/5 times 1/2. Now remember, in order to draw this, I need to think about 4/5 of 1/2 is really the intention of multiplying those two fractions together. So if I start with a half and draw it, there is a half. And if I'm allowed to keep 4/5 of the half, I can cut it into fifths. 1, 2, 4 lines makes 5 parts. 1/5, 2/5, 3/5, 4/5 of a half would be this much here, which in terms of a number is 4/10. 1/10, 2/10, 3/10, 4/10 would be your answer. Now, of course, if I multiplied it out, 4 times 1 is 4, 5 times 2 is 10. My answer of 4/10 is still. The next question is your more complicated one. It's 2 3/5 multiplied by 1/4. And remember, we said that if you have a length of 2 3/5, you can break it up into, this is 2, this is a 3/5, so the whole length of that rectangle would be 2 3/5. Its width would be 1/4. And if I think of this as being a part A and a part B and part B added together would be equivalent to 2 3/5 times 1/4, or the area of that larger rectangle. So this A is 2 times 1/4, and this B is 1/4 times 3/5, length and width. If I work that out, the area of A would be 2 times 1/4, which is going to be 2/4, which in lowest terms will be a half, because 2 times 1/4 is 2/4, reduced to lowest terms is a half. And 1/4 times 3/5 is going to be 3/20. So then our last step is to take our A and add our B, find our common denominator of 10/20 plus 3/20, and get our final answer of 13/20. So the answer is 13/20 is what the product of those two is. Check our answer by changing this to a mixed fraction, improper, multiplied by 1/4. I get 13 as my numerator, 20 as my denominator. Same answer without having to draw. Almost fell over there. Next question is a true or false. It says 1.5 times 3/5 is greater than 1.5 plus 3/5. So of course on your test, You're going to have to work this out. And if I was doing this, I would change my mixed fraction to improper and multiply it by 3/5. My answer for this would then therefore be 9/10. And at this stage right here, I can probably not even have to do the next addition because I know that this is going to be, the sum is greater than 1. Because it's impossible to take 1.5 and add something to it unless that's a negative fraction and get something less than 1. So regardless of what the sum of those two fractions are, I know that it's going to be greater than 1, right? The sum is greater than 1. So therefore 9/10 can't be greater than 1, therefore must be false. Now if I actually worked it out, which probably most of you did because you're good students, you probably did 3, or who did it that way? Just said the greater than 1. Did anyone do that? No. 3/2 plus 3/5. Common denominator is 10. You get 15/10 plus 6/10 is 21/10, which is 2 1/10. So 2 1/10 is greater than 9/10, not the other way around, so it's still false. Next question, 2 3/4 times 1/2 is greater than 11/4 divided by 2. Well, if you're really bright, you looked at this and said, that's the same question. Because 2 3/4 is really, oh sorry, not 11/2, but 11/4 as an improper fraction times 1/2. And if I was to do this question, I would multiply by the reciprocal of 2, which is this. And without even working out what the answer is, I know that if I was to actually multiply this out, they're going to be the same. So therefore, false. The answer is they are equal. Neither is greater than the other. For poops and giggles, they're both 11/8, which is 1 3/8. But it doesn't matter. That is insignificant. As long as you prove to me that you have two sides that are equal, that's all you needed to do. Our next question is a BEDMAS question involving the multiplication of 1 1/2 and 3/4 plus the addition of an additional 5/8. So on your test, I would fully expect for you not to do the 5/8 plus first, but rather show me what the product of 3/2 multiplied by 3/4 is, which is 9/8. Now, normally what we'd like to do is take 9/8 and make it back into 1 1/8, but because we're still working with it, we're going to keep it improper until the very end. This is nice because it works out that the denominator is the same, which means I don't need equivalent fractions, which means my final answer is 14/8, which is 1 6/8, which if you put it on your test, I'm going to put a frowny face because in lowest terms, both are divisible by 2. You get 1 3/4 as your final answer. Your next question, 2/3 take away 1/8 divided by 2. Again, same as the last one. I'm not going to do the subtraction before division. 1/8 multiplied by the reciprocal of 2 is 1/2. So it's going to be 2/3 take away 1/16. This is a little complicated because what is your common denominator? It is 48. And this will be 32/48 is equivalent to 2/3. 3/48 is equivalent to 1/16. So now that you have your common denominator, subtract your numerators, you get your final answer of 29/48. And your last question, this is your last question, right? 3/4 multiplied by, that's multiplied by 1 1/2, take away 3/8, and then divide that by 5. So I'm going to put 3/4 multiplied by whatever this is. So I'm going to work this out. 3/2, take away 3/8. Common denominator is 8. Equivalent fraction is 12/8, take away 3/8, which is 9/8. Is that right? So all of this here is going to work out to be 9/8. And now I have just division multiplication left, so I'm going to multiply first. I'm going to get 27 over 32 because I'm going to multiply the numerators. Let's multiply the denominators. Now I'm going to change this to multiplication. and use the reciprocal of 5, which is a fifth. And my final answer will be 27 over 160. And that is lowest terms.